Good morning from Easier Habits Live, your favorite 8 a.m. Central Business live stream. I'm Alec.
And I am Meg.
And today we're going to be revisiting how we do outreach because it's been somewhat successful, but we haven't talked specifically about who we're reaching out to in a little while, especially since before the trip. So I figured it'd be worth revisiting that. I'll revamp my plans for marketing to try out some new ideas. And while I was out on a walk this morning, I had a good one, especially for pictures. So that's what we got going for today. First, the communication tip.
Communication tip, yay! So this is something that I was talking to a friend / collaborator with last night, but it's the idea of the specific words and other things that we use when we talk to not only ourselves, but other people as well. So if any of you have studied NLP, natural language processing,
Neural,
that one, something like that, then you've heard a little bit about this, but it's the idea that, for example, if you say like, oh, I'm bad at this thing, right? Using the present tense in English, right? The simple present tense in English indicates that something has been true in the past, is currently true now, and will probably continue to be true in the future. For example, I like ice cream. That was true in the past. That is true now. That will probably be true in the future. As opposed to something like, I have liked something in the past. Maybe I do or maybe I don't right now, and I have no idea about the future. So when you apply this to something like a difficulty, right? I've struggled with X thing in the past. I am working on it, right, to improve it for the future, and hopefully, right, things will be better in the future. And so that's one of many examples. There's other things like those words should and must and ought to and things like that we use frequently to try and motivate ourselves, or to get ourselves to do things out of obligation, or to get other people to do things that we want them to do. And a better way to do that is reframing for yourself, like wanting to do things, or, if you want X thing, then this will help you get to that. So rather than, oh man, I have to, do that. Say, okay, well, I want this thing and that's going to get me there. So, okay, great. I want to do that thing. And wants are generally better motivators than obligations. Although obligations can work in the absence of something else. So as you are using your language, think specifically about those types of words and the effects that they're having on you and on the people around you.
Great.
Yep.
So you have found how many people to be in the first pilot?
7. I think actually it might be more now. I have to check and see what happened over the weekend.
Yay.
So we'll see.
Right.
But I had 7 as of Friday.
That's great. So we're on target with plenty of people who can give testimonials, right? That's kind of the basic threshold of this Kickstarter, right?
Yep.
Stretch goals, though, right, would be having twice as many people, or maybe even having a goal of how many referrals we want to get from this, right?
Definitely.
So there's ways to think about that. Before we dive into outreach, is there any more setup? Let's. I'm reordering my mind to all of the things in the proper sequence.
Gotta love Mondays.
So one, yeah, exactly. But we talked about, setting a priority of the 3 most crucial things you need to achieve in a given day. What are your 3 things for today?
My 3 things for today. Goodness. Okay, so 1 is post in the group that I'm doing again that, hey, this thing's starting next week. So I think that's a good thing, just to kind of keep people reminded of that thing. Oh, there's so many competing things in my brain. Let me think.
That's why we do this exercise.
I know. It's good. Yeah. It's tricky, but it's good. It's tricky and it's good. But is another one of those those words. Okay, so I think if we're going for stretch goals, right, then I want to continue reaching out to more people. So I think I'm going to set my number at 35 again, although including in that people that I reached out to last week and I want to follow up with.
Completely valid.
Yes. So I've got that. And then I think my third one is start actually making sure I have my content ready for next week when my challenge starts. And my first step in that is to contact the person that I kind of walked through this whole process, like a month or something ago, to see if I can use her thing as an example. I think that's a good first step.
Great.
So, yep.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to ask about. If there's anything you need to be able to run the challenge. So it seems like you got the basics covered. Those sound like really good priorities. In the outreach, let's dive into that in terms of who are you reaching out to?
Yes. So the who is going to be, because I've already reached out to the people that I know, right, that I think might be interested. I guess there's always reaching out to people I'm not sure if they're interested or not, which would, I don't know. I guess I've got a couple of different possibilities there. So people who I don't think necessarily would need my service, but who might know other people who do. So who either their English is good enough or whatever, but just saying, hey, I've got this challenge coming up. Would you be willing to, share it, or do you know anybody who might benefit from that? So that could be a good one. And then
Well, so a few months back, one of the research things we did is multiple Facebook groups. Like, are you primarily getting from your Global Republic group, or are you tapping into LinkedIn or Facebook?
So
Japanese groups?
Mostly Global Republic and LinkedIn, but the Facebook groups I think is a good idea.
Right.
Because I know several people, several different groups there that I could potentially tap for that. So, yeah. I think that's a good one.
Great. That's a good way to go. And then the other one that'd be good for you to keep a list of is if you can find other people in the business English world in Japan, like those influencers, being engaged with them.
Yeah.
And I think there are ways that you can let people who are interested find you without being too spammy. So, for example, while researching for a seminar or 5-day challenge that I'm producing, I found this cool resource.
Yes.
Right? You're not advertising it. Maybe a very, very defensive moderator will be like, that's spam, but I'm willing to bet most people won't. Right? And, and if someone reaches out specifically for you to ask what it's about or something, you could even say, hey, I don't want to advertise in the group. Can I DM you? Right?
Yes.
And so you can, even though, you can show that you are you're being careful about the rules, even as you let people find them. I don't think that's spammy. I think that's, you could look at that as you're gaming the system, right? Because you're finding people in there. But you're leaving the door open for people who are interested, but it is, you're also very cautiously guarding the group. For instance, you're not posting the link to the 5-day challenge even in the comments under that, right?
Yeah, that
makes
sense.
I think there's probably ways, right, you can tap into those groups or even those other influencer groups or influencer conversations. You could do the same thing potentially on Twitter. I wouldn't focus, if you're using Facebook though, I guess, one channel, focus on Facebook.
Twitter is a whole other can of worms that I'm just
Yeah, I'd focus on Facebook. That's more of a thing that if you kind of feel like you're tapped out on Facebook, that would be a good thing to experiment with, or slowly start dipping your toes in other places where you find one or two people who seem to be popular and get engagement and whatnot. but yeah, I take that slowly and always like focus and prioritize just one medium for your target audience.
Yeah. I like that.
All right. So that's good. The outreach. And I think we can talk more about maybe as you're doing outreach, you can think of different ways of like document different ways of doing outreach.
Okay.
And maybe we can go through some examples of that, tomorrow or later this week.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. So in terms of ad marketing, I'm not, super surprised that a first attempt based on ChatGPT didn't go where we wanted to. I had a few other ideas. I still have to do more research and try and maybe try other ideas from people who run similar marketing challenges. And I have research from a few of those like a couple weeks ago, but I just need to find where I put them. So many different threads.
Right?
But another one, as I was thinking about copy, or not copy, but like the creative, the image, right? We now just kind of have like a clump of generic looking stock Japanese business people. Mm-hmm. That's like the only image I have from you. And so one of the things I was thinking of, like, an attractive woman looking right at the camera is always one of those differentiators, and so I could just simply swap out that creative for, a nice looking Japanese business person, but also you in particular. I mean, we could sell the idea of you as a native person, right?
Yeah.
And, there's a part of me, so last night or the night before, we had a conversation about someone that you came across in your group who was talking about the importance of, global outreach and doing global outreach, and all of their materials are in Japanese. So like there are people who need this. And I did point out that, like, all right, there are people who want this, but also, the other component we need is people who are willing to spend money on this.
Yeah.
And I think actually just as a matter of market research, I do this too, but I think there's like a tendency when you're like new in an area to try and look for the people who talk about wanting something more rather than looking for the people who are already spending money on it.
Yeah.
And that's something probably as targeting an audience, we need to find who's spending money on this.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
That's a separate thing. But
so many
like,
separate things.
As you were saying, like, as far as we know, like, this is what you've got. Sometimes what you've got is just people that are interested in this. You don't know how much, money they do spend on it or are willing to budget to spend on it.
Yeah.
But one of those things is all their materials are in Japanese. At some point, that actually running ads in Japanese is going to be one of the bigger tests.
Yeah.
I want you to be able to focus on running your first 5-day challenge, but I would say like one of the top priority things to work on
is getting,
I'll run some more tests for the next few weeks to see if there's anything. And again, I'm, setting a fairly low, like just $5 a day ad spend for these tests, because I'm not looking for one that slightly outperforms or does a little bit. What I'm looking for is like a runaway, much more successful, obviously successful one. So, and so I'm running, tests that are total like $30 to $50, rather than $20 a day, $100 a week kind of things, which is more of what Facebook's recommending, because I'm not, again, trying to get a few leads here or there. I'm trying to test for a very successful ad. So, but in terms of like what we have, like doing it in English, maybe the capitalizing on your being a native speaker, would be great. And what I would need from that then is a good creative image from you.
Yay!
So
what kind of creative image would be good?
You smiling at the camera. Creepily. Awkwardly. But a traditional pretty headshot, in businessy clothes or whatever, professional clothes, it doesn't have to be fancy. You've got to have something like that.
I mean, sort of ish, a little bit, but nothing recent. So, and that's the thing, like most of my pictures of me are selfies, because people don't take pictures of me unless I'm like in a group with them. And so, yeah, I'll have to think about that. But I can like
Yeah.
set up our camera and like take pictures of myself. I'm sure that would be fine.
Yep.
That's a thing I can do.
So that would be a good direction. And then there's, other places where we can go, with the asterisk that probably we should like sit down maybe sometime, put our heads together and try and figure out who's already spending money on, business English lessons and coaching and books, and how to tap into that market. Like, is there a really popular book, and is there any way, for instance, on Facebook that we could, if people list that as one of their interests, we could target them, right? And I mean, whatever, shelling over 10 or 20 bucks for a book is not a lot of money, but it is at least someone who has actually spent money on it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. With that, I'm going to wrap up my series of business tips on how to focus within your work with something that I am currently wrestling with or grappling with, given especially that marketing is not my forte. When you're finding that something is slowing you down, try and find a way that you can basically spend money on it to get your time back. Right. So some of that could be courses, and I could probably stand to take like a Facebook targeting course, but I've played around with the interface enough. I probably don't need, you can do this. What I need to know is like specifically how to find people who spent money on something. So I can research that in particular, if there's a course for that. In some ways I'm trying to do that this is automating our outreach by running ads in the first place, right? So that at least I don't have to do that like I'm not doing outreach as well every day, right? So that's one way that I'm automating it. Another way is to get a marketing consultant, and we've worked with one before and we quite like working with him. The one thing I really want to test out before we do that is the effectiveness of our English versus Japanese ads.
Yeah.
Because if we find out that our Japanese ads get traction where our English ones don't, then we would probably have to find a specifically Japanese, native marketer to pay if we wanted to do that, to help, pay Facebook ads. So, and so that is like the question that we'd have to go through. And I guess even saying that out loud, that means like maybe at some point later this week, if we can test translating you, or you can get a friend to translate some of our ads into Japanese, I could send you the copy. Okay. And you can, translate it into Japanese and have someone, or we could even pay someone if you want to find someone, to pay to translate them into Japanese or something like that. Okay. We can try that out. If you have time, like getting this first challenge, I mean, you already have people for it, but like making the most of this first challenge is top priority. But that is a big test, because that will have ramifications for our ability to pay somebody else to do it.
Yeah, well, and to get people for future things. So, yeah.
So, all right. And we probably will, like, even if we do that, it might be worth going back to Jeremy for marketing strategy.
Yes, definitely.
Like, for instance, after we do our first challenge, get testimonials, come back and see if he's willing to do like some kind of consulting session where we can, take what we've learned and figure out, and you have some of your packages, but go over with him, maybe some ideas for like upsells, cross sells, etc. How to keep people engaged after that, after the after the 5-day challenge. Might even be worth, even seeing if we can schedule a conversation before the end of the challenge, just to figure out that last engagement. Like, how do we keep people engaged and or upsell them? Okay. That might be a good conversation to have with him.
Cool.
So, a lot of thinking aloud, but again, the business tip for finding focus is just see where you could trade money for time, because time is the ultimate limited resources. Money you can make more of.
Yay.
So, all right. Well, I guess until tomorrow, make big changes, one small habit at a time.
Bye.
Bye.